I was driving towards Prescott, Arizona, with my girlfriend Becky, who was dozing off in the seat next to me. Rolling the window partially down, in the hopes that the cool air would keep me alert, I warily kept driving my Chevy down this narrow highway road, with nothing but a thick forested area on the passenger side of me. There was mostly open meadowland, with a few clumps of trees here and there along the driver's side of the road. I had wanted to leave first thing in the morning on Friday, but Becky was called into work at the last minute, so we ended up leaving at close to 8 o'clock that night. Knowing we had to head back before early Monday, I didn't want to wait until the next day to go and end up losing a good chunk of a Saturday to hang out. So here I was. It had to be close to at least 10 p.m. by then, driving by the light of my dim headlights with a close to full moon overhead. I noticed some smoke or steam coming out from the sides of my car hood. This, in and of itself, was not unusual, as the car was close to 15 years old, dented up a bit, with the dimmer than usual lights and hoses that seemed to know the most inopportune time to break. Add to that a radiator that overheated during the summer months or when in use for long periods of time. This being early October, I hadn't given the radiator much thought. It hadn't bothered to act up since August, and as the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. But something sure was putting off plumes under the hood, so I nudged Becky and explained in short that I had to pull over. As I slowed down a bit, Becky rolled down her window and peered along the edges of the dark wall of pine trees. "Up there," she exclaimed, pointing forward. "About 20 feet or so there's a dirt shoulder of some kind." Slowing to a crawl, feeling safe at the moment as another car hadn't passed us for a number of miles now, I quickly saw the flat dirt indent about a length and width of 2 cars, just to the right of the road. The dirt area, much like the whole side of the road, was lined by knotted mass of trees, giving it the look of a half circle cut down the middle by the road. I pulled over and turned the car off, leaving the keys hanging from the ignition. With the headlights on, I got out of the car and walked in front of it, popping the hood. I had grabbed a flashlight out of the glove box, and so proceeded to inspect the damage. Sure enough, the radiator had overheated. I bent down a little to peek between the crack of the hood's bottom edge and the top of the car front, to look at Becky through the front windshield. I was going to call out to ask her to grab the gallon of bottle of water I kept behind the front seat, there since August at least. So once it cooled a bit, I could add water to the radiator. Expecting to see her dozing off or looking towards me, I was surprised to see her staring wide-eyed, mouth agape, out in the direction of the driver's side window. She was white as a ghost. "What are you doing?" I demanded to know. She kept staring out at the meadow fields, only raising her arm slightly to the point in the direction she was looking. "What?" I snapped, walking back towards the driver's door. As I did, I looked out into the moonlit meadow. I saw a short line of trees in the distant background, a small pine of about 20-25 feet out, directly in line with the back end of the car, and running about 10 feet from the point forward, in a line almost parallel with the road, was a short brick wall, about 3 feet or so high. A sparse forested area began, about 40 feet or so from the wall's edges, in either directions of the small meadow. I looked back at her. So, probably part of an old house or a fence. What's the big deal about the wall? As I got into the car and shut the door to wait for the innards to cool, she replied slowly and quietly, "It isn't the brick wall. It's what I saw looking at us over the top of the wall." I turned to her. "What? Quit messing around." "Screw you," she hissed. Then she stopped talking, and her gaze drifted past me, to the wall. I turned to look. I saw a small, translucent, white, stocky humanoid form, just shy of 3 feet tall. Its round eyes from this distance appearing as black as night. Standing in front of the wall, it slowly took a step or two towards us, its short, chubby arms at its side. I screamed and tried to turn on the flashlight. I knew the batteries were low and sometimes had to jiggle it and turn the cap slightly to get it to work. So, in my excitement, I twisted the cap and the batteries flew out and I just about dirtied my pants. As the batteries were now rolling under the seat and across the floor of the car, I decided to forget that. I looked up and saw the hood was still up and froze. "He's going back," Becky then whispered. I looked out of the moonlit field again, just in time to see this thing scamper around the side of the wall out of view. As Becky quickly rolled up to her car window, I said I was going to shut the hood. To hell with the water. If the radiator didn't burn out, we stopped down the road and add water. "Give me the bottle. I'll dump some in the reservoir and shut the hood. You just start the car," Becky replied. As she got out of the car and went to the front, I turned the key. The engine groaned, trying to turn over. I looked from the steering wheel to Becky pouring the water into the reservoir to the wall and back again. As Becky slammed the hood shut, I looked towards the wall, to the small, white head of the ghostly entity peering over the top of it. "Get in the car!" I yelled, as the creature's tiny hands gripped the top of the wall and it raised itself clean over, landing on its feet, running towards us. Becky jumped in the passenger side, locking her door. She no longer had the bottle, which couldn't have been more than half empty now. But, under the circumstances, I didn't ask, and I didn't care. I turned the key, and it wouldn't turn on. "Oh God," Becky murmured. I didn't want to look. I just turned the key again, still just that tired groan. Becky leaned over, reaching past me, hitting the door lock with one hand, while rolling the windows up with the other, and it was one of those older manual window knob roll-up jobs. "Hurry," she cried, frightened as she sat back up. With one more turn of the key, the car finally started, and I punched the accelerator. I looked towards the field. That little thing was only a few feet from the edge of the road, but thankfully it was on the edge of the other side of the road. It was still close enough that I could see its eyes, which were indeed dark, empty holes. Its mouth was open now, in a wide, leering grin. And I could have sworn it had small, pointed teeth, but it all happened so fast. Its skin or surface seemed to be rolling as the entire creature ran at my car. As we headed down the road, I turned my rearview mirror in such a way that I could see it, quite a bit back now, turning away from us, walking along the side of the road in the opposite direction. I watched the road ahead. Then Becky screamed. She had been half turned looking back at the creature too. Now she bent straight over, her head buried in her hands. I turned my rearview mirror to and fro, but only saw the road. It was gone. We drove another 20 minutes or so with the car smoking a small portion of the way. The car overheated again as we entered the outskirts of town. Only then would Becky let me stop. As we parked and waited for the first gas station we hit, I asked what had happened. "I was watching it. It stopped at the edge of the road," she answered. "I know, I saw it walking away." "Yeah," she hesitated. "It was walking away. But as it walked away, its head turned all the way around, still grinning as it watched us drive away. Needless to say, when we headed back, we left at 10 a.m. to make sure we get back long before nightfall."